The 2024 World Junior Championship begins in just a couple of days, and on today's episode, I'll dive into a Chicago Blackhawks fan guide of what to be watching for throughout the tournament. I'll dive into the top draft-eligible players taking part in the WJC, as well as the expected roles for the 6 Blackhawks prospects, and I'll also go over who are the favorites to win the gold this year in Sweden. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a quick follow on X at JackBushman2, or you can go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And also, just a quick reminder, if you like what you're watching or what you're listening to today, then please go and help your boy out by smashing the like button, commenting down below, and of course, subscribing to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. All of that is 100% free. It won't cost you anything and really does help me out tremendously. So please make sure to take care of that real quick. And you can also go and turn on those push notifications to get notified when the episode's uploaded to YouTube each and every day. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. To kick things off here today, as I'm sure you all can tell by the title and the thumbnail, I'm going to be diving into a fan guide of what Chicago Blackhawks fans should be looking for and what they should be watching throughout the 2024 World Junior Championship. It's nearly that time of the year once again, folks, where we get a great look at the top 17 and 18-year-olds in hockey represent their native countries and go and fight for a gold medal. And this year, tournament's heading back overseas to Gothenburg, Sweden, where it was actually supposed to be held before COVID, but then that ended up happening. The tournament gets moved to Canada. There's postponements, 2 World Juniors within like a 3-month span last year, but now we're back to normal. All is good on the COVID front, of course, knock on wood. Tournament's going to be held back in Sweden, and it's starting next Tuesday, folks. That's right. We're just 4 days away from the tournament getting underway. And what I'm going to be discussing first to open things up, I'm sure you all are aware of the 6 Blackhawks prospects that are going to be taking part in the World Junior Championship this year. Don't worry, I'll be getting to that here in just a moment. Make sure to stay tuned to today's episode for that. But what I want to start things out with is all of the 2024 draft-eligible players that are going to be taking part in the WJC this year. And I'm sure a lot of you remember this time last year watching 17-year-old Connor Bedard absolutely dazzle throughout the tournament and lead Canada to yet another gold medal. Even though we're a year later, the Blackhawks have landed Bedard, the future is looking promising. Not all that much has changed in terms of where the Blackhawks are at in the standings, and it looks like we're going to be in the mix for the number 1 overall pick for the 2nd consecutive season. And that's why it's important for the Blackhawks and all of us fans as well to get a little bit more acclimated with some of the top prospects that are playing in this tournament. It just gives us a little bit better of an idea of what they can bring to the table ahead of the draft itself against some of the top players at their age group and the year ahead of them as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the list of the top 2024 NHL draft-eligible players taking part in the World Junior Championship. Kicking things off is probably the name you all are the most familiar with, and it's Macklin Celebrini. He did wind up cracking Team Canada's final roster. The 6', 190-pound center is still 17 years of age, one of the youngest players in the tournament. Doesn't turn 18 until June, by the way, as well. So leading up right into the NHL draft, I don't know the date off the top of my head, but could still potentially be 17 like Connor Bedard when he gets drafted. And it feels like at this point in time, Macklin Celebrini is the clear-cut favorite to get selected number 1 overall. Heading into the start of this year, felt like he and American Cole Iserman were kind of the two that were battling head-to-head for the projected number one spot, but Celebrini has kind of elevated his game thus far against men while playing college hockey as a freshman for Boston University, a program us Blackhawks fans are all familiar with. And given that Hawks second round pick in 2022, Ryan Green is in his second year with Boston University as well. It's been nice to kind of keep up with him and also keep an eye on Macklin Celebrini at the same time. And it's been fun to keep up with. Celebrini has been dominating college hockey at 17 years of age. He has 25 points, 10 goals, and 15 assists in his first 15 games with Boston University as a freshman, second in the country in points per game. There's a good reason why he's kind of separated himself from Yzerman and the rest of the pack. And in my opinion, at this point, it seems pretty clear that he's going to go number one unless something absolutely bananas happens in this tournament or in the next couple of months. Celebrini is just a can't miss prospect, not on the same level as Connor Bedard, obviously, but has the ability to be a very special franchise-altering type of player as well. So a player Blackhawks fans should definitely be keeping an eye out for, not only just throughout this tournament, but go and follow Ryan Green and see what he's up to as a sophomore for the Terriers as well. It also gives you an opportunity to be following along with what Macklin Celebrini is doing as a freshman in his draft-eligible season. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch him play a meaningful role for Team Canada as well. It looks like he's going to be their second line center as things are shaking out at the moment. And he figures to play a pretty key part in their team. So going to be fun watching Macklin Celebrini suit up for Team Canada here in the World Juniors. He is undoubtedly the player that everyone is going to be watching the most throughout this tournament. Number two, Konsta Helenius, someone that's kind of been on the radar for the last year. Looks like he is projected to be a top 10 pick by most draft scouts and most draft analysts. 5'11", 175-pound center / wing. It's going to be interesting to see which position he is going to be playing for Finland during the World Juniors here. Another guy that doesn't turn 18 until the summer, still 17 years of age, won't turn 18 until May. And he's been putting up some pretty impressive numbers playing professionally over in Finland's Liga. 20 points in 28 games against grown men at 17 years of age, 8 goals and 12 assists. I think there is an opportunity for Helenius to even rise up a little bit more. I think he could be a top 5 pick when it's all said and done because of the skill that he projects in, the maturity he's already showing at a young age, going up against grown men and nearly being a point per game player. That's pretty gosh darn impressive. A reason certainly for all of us to be watching Team Finland throughout the World Junior Championship. They have a couple of other players, a couple of other guys that are projected to be first round selections in the 2024 NHL draft as well. And one of them is Emil Hemming, who's got a little bit more size than Konsta Helenius does and is a little bit more of a true goal scorer. 6'2", 195-pound winger. Also doesn't turn 18 years of age until June. Like Konsta Helenius, he is playing in Finland's Liga as well, playing professionally against grown men. Hasn't had quite the same output, though. Only 8 points in 26 games so far this year, 6 goals and 2 assists. And by all accounts, he seems like he's going to be a mid to late projected first round pick, but going to be fun to watch his goal scoring prowess for sure. And don't forget, the Blackhawks they are expected to have 2 first round selections this year. One thing to note is that if Tampa Bay does finish in the bottom 10 of the NHL, seems pretty unlikely, but if they somehow do that, then the pick will be pushed back until 2025. But given that it doesn't seem likely for the Lightning, it's worth following up on guys like this who are projected to go somewhere in the 20s or 30s, maybe where the Bolts are projected to be picking. That pick is going to become the Blackhawks this summer as well. So Emil Hemming, another guy to keep an eye on. Up next is Adam Jiricek, a last name that may sound familiar. His brother David was a high round pick not all that long ago in the NHL draft as well. And like David, Adam has some pretty good size on the back end too. 6'2", 6'3", depending on where you look. Listed at about 176 pounds, still 17 as well, doesn't turn 18 until June 1st. His stock has kind of been swirling a little bit, though, the last couple of months, which is tough because as a defensive defenseman, he's doing good things while playing professionally over in the Czech Republic, but it's really hard when he doesn't give much offensively and he's only got 1 assist in 19 games this year. And as a young kid playing pro, there are going to be struggles on the defensive side of things too. And when we haven't really seen, according to most scouts and analysts following Jiricek, it seems like he has a really hard time with his vision and his puck moving in the defensive zone against grown men. So when he's having struggles both in what's supposed to be kind of his bread and butter and also not contributing on the offensive side of things, it leaves people a little bit stumbled on what type of player this guy could actually be, especially when he's still only 17 years old. But with the last name Jiricek, with some good skating ability and some good size with a right-handed shot, he is still projected to be a mid to late first-round pick at this point in time. But this is a very big tournament for both Czechia and defenseman Adam Jiricek to kind of give everyone a little bit better understanding of what he is at this point in time. And then Zeev Bui for Team USA. I mean, what more can I say about this guy? His stock has absolutely skyrocketed since the start of this season. He has been dominant as offensive defenseman for the University of Denver, one of the top teams in the entire country, and he's been at the charge of it, one of the leading scorers while being a defenseman. He's got 25 points in 18 games as a freshman with Denver, 5 goals and 20 assists. Looks like a guy who is more than capable of quarterbacking a top power play unit one day at the NHL level. He's got good speed, he's got good skill, good awareness, all around heads up offensive defenseman coming out of the United States development program. Looked like he was going to be a bubble, like maybe a guy who gets drafted in the late 20s, 30s, or maybe an early second rounder. Now there are some conversations about him potentially moving all the way up inside the top 10. So this is a really crucial tournament for Zeev as well, to kind of solidify that it hasn't just been what he's been doing at the college level. He can go and do it on the biggest stage as well. And if he does that, man, there are going to be a lot of conversations about him going inside the top 10, I firmly believe. 4th in the country in points per game as a defenseman, also as a freshman. Really impressive start to the year for Zeev. And the defense for the United States is really kind of the thing that's up in the air. So he's going to have to be a big part of it if the United States wants any hope of winning the gold. And then coming up next, we have Michael Branzeg-Nygaard, one of the best names, I guess you could say, of the 2024 NHL draft, playing for Team Norway, which isn't, expected to do all that much here in the tournament, but he's really the only reason to be keeping an eye on the Norwegians. 6'1", 195-pound winger, turned 18 back in October, currently playing for Mora in the Hockey Allsvenskan League, which I believe, I don't know why I'm guessing this, it's the second best division in all of Sweden. And in 22 games for them, he's got 6 points, 2 goals, and 4 assists. Projected to go somewhere between 10 and 15 at this point in time, but good size for a forward, got some good skill as well. I really, out of these guys here at the top, Michael Branzeg-Nygaard is one I am the most unfamiliar with, so gives me a reason to go and watch Norway throughout this tournament, but someone Blackhawks fans should be getting familiar with as well, as could be possibly moving up into that top 10 range, or could potentially fall back as someone right around the 20th pick or into the 20s. And then last but not least, the final player that I want to talk about in terms of the 2024 eligible players is Veeti Väisänen, who's playing for Team Finland as well. Emil Hemming, Konsta Helenius, and Veeti Väisänen all playing for Team Finland here in the World Juniors. Everyone should definitely be keeping an eye on the Finns for this reason in particular. And Väisänen is a 6 foot, 163-pound left-handed defenseman who's kind of been making some charges up draft boards recently because of what he's been doing in Finland's Liga as well, playing for Kuku. 5 points in 25 games, playing on a very established blue line where I've read that he could be learning a lot from some of the older guys who also are on that decor, and has kind of helped him still at 17 years of age, kind of handle the maturity leap in turning pro and playing against grown men. So an interesting option on the back end for Team Finland as well. Väisänen is currently projected to be a late first to mid second round pick at this point in time. But as you can see, lots of reasons to be watching a lot of different teams throughout the World Junior Championship, and not just Team Canada and Macklin Celebrini, because yes, we would love to go and get the number 1 overall pick once again and to combine Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini. But even if the Blackhawks don't wind up with number 1, there are still a lot of other intriguing options out there, and I highly recommend you all get to become a little bit more familiar with them, because it makes it even more fun when draft time rolls around. You kind of are, more understanding and kind of have a better idea of the draft board and certain guys going where. And also for whoever the Blackhawks end up with, then you kind of have a better background history and knowing of what they bring to the table. So lots of purposes to be watching the World Junior Championship for reasons of the 2024 draft eligible players and also for the 6 Blackhawks prospects that are taking part in the tournament as well. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, I'll be diving into each of those players' projected roles for the United States and for Team Slovakia. But first, real quick, I need to talk to you all about FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Again, that's $150 if your team wins outright with just a $5 money line bet. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's legitimately no better time to get in on the action right now because football season is starting to get to the nitty-gritty. We're just 3 weeks away from the start of the postseason, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win bonus bets all regular season long. Again, all you have to do is pick any team to win with a $5 money line bet, such as the Bengals, the Rams, the Ravens, so on and so forth. And if your team comes through with the victory, you'll get $150 in bonus bets, and you can use them to bet on anything from the money line to point spreads, over-unders, player props, and much, much more, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And what I personally love about FanDuel is they pay you out instantly when you win, unlike some other sports books. So make sure to go and sign up and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNHL today to start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sports book. Again, that's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, an official partner of the National Football League. Segment 2, let's talk about what roles we should see out of the 6 Blackhawks prospects that are taking part in the World Junior Championship this year. And now that they've been practicing with their respected countries for the last week or so in preparation for the beginning of the tournament, we do have a little bit better knowledge as to where each of these players are going to be fitting in the lineup, what their roles are looking like, who their line mates are going to be, and all that good jazz. But starting things off, I think we have to begin with the United States, where we're seeing 4 Blackhawks prospects take part in Frank Nazar, Gavin Hayes, Oliver Moore, and Sam Renzel. And the United States actually had their first exhibition game on Thursday against Team Sweden. First thing that stood out, Frank the Tank Baby was centering Team USA's second line, skating with Isaac Howard for the Tampa Bay Lightning and Gavin Brindley of the Columbus Blue Jackets, someone that I covered pretty heavily in the 2023 NHL draft and also plays with Frank Nazar at Michigan. So probably a good idea. And you'll feel like those two have probably established chemistry with their time together as members of the Wolverines. So does make sense to keep those two together. And I believe Frank Nazar has played with Isaac Howard in the past as well. So if I had to guess, those are probably the trio that will be lining up for the United States as their third line in the opening game of the tournament. And the reason I say they're probably going to get bumped down is because technically the third line for this scrimmage or for this exhibition against Sweden was Gabe Perreault, Will Smith, and Ryan Leonard, the trio that's been together for basically 2 years together now, played with the United States Development Program in their draft year, and then all stuck together to go and play for the Boston College Eagles and have played as the same line all together as freshmen. They were listed as the third line during the scrimmage against Sweden. I don't see that, unless I don't know really why they wouldn't be the top line, quite honestly, for the United States. I feel like that's going to be their #1 line. Jimmy Snuggerud, Cutter Gauthier, and Rucker McGroarty, I figure, will probably be the second line, leaving Isaac Howard, Frank Nazar, and Gavin Brindley as the third line. Also worth noting that Rucker McGroarty didn't play during this exhibition. He's the captain of the United States, so he is going to be in the lineup. And that it is going to take a spot away from someone who cracked the starting lineup in this scrimmage against Sweden. And 1 or 2 of those guys down on the fourth line for the Blackhawks that did crack the lineup were Oliver Moore and Gavin Hayes. They played on the wings outside of Danny Nelson from Notre Dame, who served as the fourth line center, while Kerry Terrence for the Erie Otters draft pick of the New York Island, or the Anaheim Ducks, served as the extra forward in this scrimmage. But it's really going to be interesting to see who winds up cracking this fourth line. I feel like the top 9 are pretty set in stone for the United States. That's really what makes them great, is their top 9 forwards. Frank the Tank feels like a lock to be in the lineup at this point in time. It's going to be interesting. One thing I will say, I think gives Gavin Hayes a little bit of an advantage, is he's a bit bigger, 6'2", about 180 pounds, can add a little bit of physicality and net front presence. And I also think he scores a lot of his goals in the dirty areas. Yeah, he has an unbelievable shot, but feels like he's one of those guys who knows where to go to the right spots and can find the soft areas in the defensive coverage to go and get those opportunities. So combining that with size on the fourth line, I think does kind of bode well for Gavin Hayes. Oliver Moore, a younger player, I think that doesn't work in his advantage. I feel like his speed has to be in the lineup, but at the same point in time, look at the top 9 for the United States. They have a lot of speed and skill. But the one thing I will counter with is Kerry Terrence doesn't really offer a whole lot of physicality either. That's not really his game. He plays a skill style as well. So we'll see who winds up. We'll see if Gavin Hayes and Oliver Moore wind up playing together on the fourth line when the tournament begins. That's really the one thing I think we should be keeping an eye on with Team USA's roster. Feels like one of them is absolutely going to be in there, up in the air in terms of whether or not both of them are going to have a spot on the fourth line when the action does begin next Tuesday. Then on defense, Sam Rinzel has kind of been skating on the fourth pairing, if you will, and there have kind of been reports all camp long that he was probably going to be on the outside looking in. The one thing that does work in Rinzel's favor is he has some size on the right side, which the United States does not have a lot of, but he is more so known as an offensive puck-moving defenseman. And the defensive side of things, that feels like the areas where Rinzel still needs to develop and still needs to grow the most. And those are kind of the issues that the United States has as well. They don't really have that strong, sturdy defenseman presence, and that's not Rinzel's role. So I just don't know if they have the confidence for him to enter the lineup that he'll be good enough defensively, when that's really the question for the United States D-corps as a whole. So the way that I'm kind of feeling, I imagine at this point in time that Rinzel is going to be an extra defenseman for the United States, but if he gets an opportunity in the lineup, he better go out and make the most of it if he wants to try and become a staple. Looks like I said, that he's on the outside looking in as the tournament is set to begin here in a couple of days. As far as things go for Team Slovakia, Martin Misiak and Adam Gajan figure to play very lofty roles for the Slovaks this year. Misiak, from what I've gathered on social media, I've had to do some digging. I couldn't find reports of their line combinations or really anything anywhere, but what I found digging into the nitty-gritty is that Misiak has been skating on a line with Dalibor Dvorsky, who of course was a top 10 selection for the St. Louis Blues in last year's draft, and Alex Chernick for the Philadelphia Flyers as well. He was a 4th round pick in last year's draft, but from what I've been able to gather, it seems like Misiak, he didn't play in their scrimmage, and it feels like they wanted to give other guys an opportunity to kind of solidify their spots in the lineup. But it seems like he's going to be a lock to be in a top 6 role for Slovakia here in this tournament, and playing alongside Dalibor Dvorsky, the top prospect that Slovakia has. A really good opportunity for him if that winds up being true. Very excited to see Martin Misiak on the big stage this year. And then Adam Gajan was the goaltender of the tournament last year. A very awesome story. Projected to be the backup, winds up being the guy, leads Slovakia to a win over the United States, a hard-fought game against Team Canada where Connor Bedard ultimately ended up dangling him out of his jockstrap. Not alone, though, he danced through the entire Slovak defensive unit. But Adam Gajan figures, to be one of the best, if not the best goaltender in the entire World Juniors here. He's got the experience coming off a great start to his campaign with the Green Bay Gamblers of the United States Hockey League. Hopefully he'll be able to ride that momentum from last year and what he's been able to do so far this season, playing junior hockey in the United States. And we know Slovakia is going to need another performance out of him like he did last year for them to be competitive. They have a pretty thin decor this year. But two focal parts of the team are two Blackhawks prospects, which is very exciting. A lot of reasons for Blackhawks fans to be thrilled about where their prospects are going to be. I mean, Frank Nazar figures to be a huge part. Yeah, I know Oliver Moore and Gavin Hayes are on the fourth line, but as we'll talk about in just a moment here, the United States are one of the favorites heading into this tournament, and Slovakia has a chance to play spoiler as well with two fellow Blackhawks prospects at the helm of their team. All right, there's my outline of the Blackhawks, 6 prospects taking part in the WJC. Like I said, coming up in just a moment here, I'm going to dive into who deserves to be the favorite heading into the start of the tournament. But first, I need to talk to you all about AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. I first gave AG1 a try a few years ago, and now I drink it literally every single day because I was tired of taking so many supplements on a daily basis, and I wanted just a single solution that supports my entire health and covers my nutritional basis. I drink AG1 right when I wake up in the morning, whether I am going to work out or I'm heading to work or jumping on the podcast here, because it makes me feel unstoppable, like I'm really ready to go, ramped up. And I love how I've also covered my nutritional basis at the same time. Thanks to AG1, covering my basis couldn't be any easier. I just mix 1 small scoop with water and drink it first thing in the morning. And I also love it because it costs less than $3 per day, which is such a cheap and easy way to invest in your health and your body. If a comprehensive solution is what you need, then go and try AG1 right now, and you'll also get a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is go and visit ag1.com/NHL Network. Again, go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network to check it out right now. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're still tuned into this point of today's episode, let me say thank you very much. I really, really appreciate all of your support. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, before I wrap things up for the day, folks, and let you all go and enjoy the rest of your weekends, I think I might as well talk about who is currently the favorite to take home the gold at the 2024 World Junior Championship. Team Canada, of course, is the 2-time defending champions. It feels like they still have that it factor over every other country when it comes to the World Juniors. It's just kind of like their baby. And while we're focused on Christmas here in the United States, Canada is full force paying attention to the World Juniors. And that's why I still think they got to be the favorites entering this tournament as the 2-time back-to-back champs. The one thing I will say, though, their squad is not as deep as it's been the last few years. The forward group really isn't all that impressive. It's Macklin Celebrini, Matthew Savoie, Connor Geekie. It's a kind of thin forward group for Canada in terms of what they've had the last couple of years. Goaltending remains an issue for them. I think they just kind of remain the head honchos, and they know it. They just have that buzz around them when it comes to the World Juniors. But I will say they are susceptible to being dethroned this year, and the team that I think is the most likely to do it, unbiasedly, is the United States. They have a star-studded forward group this year. Undoubtedly, in my opinion, the best forward group in the entire World Juniors. I already mentioned Will Smith, Gabe Perreault, Ryan Leonard, Cutter Gauthier, Rutger McGroarty, Jimmy Snoogerud, Frank Nazar, Gavin Brindley, Isaac Howard. I mean, the top 9, basically all of them were high first-round selections. And the goaltending is also one of, if not the best in the entire tournament as well, with the duo that they have in Trey Augustine and Jacob Fowler. The forwards and the goaltending are very strong for the United States. It's really going to come down to their defense. I don't know if they have enough well-rounded guys in their own end to go and win this tournament. They certainly have the forwards to go and score enough goals. The question is, are they going to be able to prevent enough going into their own cage? But I do feel like a team from North America is probably going to win once again. We haven't seen a non-North American winner since 2018, I believe. I firmly believe this United States team has the capability to usurp Canada, but what it comes down to is they got to go and do it in the big moment with the bright lights on, with the stage the biggest. The United States has to get past that it factor and kind of just history and years of Canada just having the upper hand over them. It feels like this is an opportunity for the United States really to take that next step in their program. The question is, can they go out and execute when it matters the most? As far as the non-North American teams that I think are in the mix and have realistic chances of winning the gold medal this year, I think Sweden is a team that certainly has to be watched with a keen eye, because while they haven't won since 2012 and they've only won the World Juniors twice historically, this is a group that has a ton of talent in all areas. Their forward group is super deep. They don't have the high-end skill that the United States has, but this is still a top nine that's basically filled out with NHL prospects. Philip Bysted, Liam Ogren of the Minnesota Wild, Noah Ostlund, Otto Stenberg of the St. Louis Blues, David Edstrom of the Vegas Golden Knights, a first-round pick as well, Anton Wahlberg of the Buffalo Sabres. It's a pretty deep forward group. They have three lines that really can go out there and score, and they might have the tournament's best D-corps, led by Axel Sandin Palika of the Detroit Red Wings, a defenseman prospect I really liked in last year's draft. Tom Villander out of, who did he get picked by? This is killing me. Another first-round pick from last year as well. And Elias Pettersson, not the forward, the defenseman prospect for the Vancouver Canucks. They have a really good D-corps, in my opinion, the best in the tournament. It's just going to come down to whether or not they can get enough saves out of their goaltending. But I really do believe Sweden is the team to pick outside of the North Americans. Next, I'm going to go with Slovakia. I might be a little bit biased here, but looking back at last year's World Juniors, they took these two top teams. I mean, they beat the United States 6-3. And thanks to Adam Gajan, they had, Canada. They went into overtime with Canada until Connor Bedard went out there and did that thing. But I think Slovakia is a sleeper team. They have a couple of stars up front, Adam Gajan and net. I really do think the top three teams, Canada, the United States, and Sweden, are the most likely, but Slovakia is my sleeper team to keep an eye on this year. I think Finland probably deserves to be next. They're intriguing. They have a lot of young players, like I outlined earlier, but got some injury problems, and I feel like they're going to be able to give a better crack at it next year when some of these draft-eligible players have another year of experience under their belt. So I got Finland coming in at 5 and then Czechia coming in at 6. They shocked everyone to make the gold medal game last year and finished with the silver medal, but I just don't see them kind of catching everyone by surprise like they did last year. And one thing to note is they scored 37 goals in the tournament last year, which was their most that they had potted since 1995. I doubt that they go and score that many goals again, even though they are returning some guys, and I don't think they have that surprise factor. So I'm going with Czechia as the 6th-ranked team heading into the World Juniors. But like I said, ultimately, I do believe a North American team is going to come away with the gold medal once again. And I think the United States has a real chance at surpassing Canada. I hope they would. Man, I would love to see them meet in the gold medal game. How awesome would that be? I think that's all United States and Hockey Canada fans want in general. Obviously, we want our own countries to go and get the dub over one another, but I think that would be a very exciting and fitting ending to this World Junior Championship. I think they are the two best teams. I do ultimately, though, think the United States has the best full-fledged roster here in the tournament. Can they go and use that to their advantage and go and finally get over the hump? We'll see. They got to take down Canada, it feels like, to go and do that, as the Canadians are the two-time defending champions here. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, tournament starts on Tuesday, the day after Christmas. It's like another little Christmas special the day after, so make sure to tune in. I think I'm only going to have one more episode come out before the World Junior starts. So everyone, if I don't get to see you again, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a happy World Juniors. The best time of the year is finally back in a couple of days. Lots of reasons for Blackhawks fans to be watching with a keen eye. All right, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way, you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and give me a follow on X at JackBushman2, or you can go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.